Girl returns from death with a horrifying warning from Jesus. The room was silent, except for the steady beep of hospital monitors. 12-year-old Lily Miller lay motionless on the operating table, her small chest no longer rising and falling. The surgeons stepped back, their faces grim as they called the time of death. But in that moment, suspended between life and earth, Lily found herself floating toward a brilliant light. A warm, loving presence enveloped her, but the peace was short-lived. For what she saw next would haunt her forever, a vision so terrifying, a truth so dark, that she was sent back with a divine warning for humanity. The message wasn't one of comfort, it was one of fear. Dr. James Miller stood out among his colleagues at the research facility not just for his brilliant mind, but for his unwavering moral compass. A neuroscientist with decades of experience, he carried himself with a quiet dignity that commanded respect. His office walls were adorned not with the usual academic accolades, but with family photos, moments frozen in time with his wife Sarah and their daughter Lily. His most treasured possession was a small wooden cross, handed down through generations, that sat on his desk beside cutting-edge research papers. Sarah Miller was everything James wasn't: artistic, spontaneous, and deeply intuitive. A music teacher at the local church, she filled their modest suburban home with melody and warmth. Her faith was as natural as breathing, expressed through hymns and gentle prayers rather than scholarly debate. She had a way of finding light in the darkest moments, a trait that would be tested beyond measure in the months to come. Their daughter Lily was a perfect blend of both parents. At 12, she possessed her father's analytical mind and her mother's spiritual sensitivity. Sunday mornings would find her sitting in the front pew, small notebook in hand, drawing parallels between her father's scientific explanations and the pastor's sermons. Her questions often left adults searching for answers, yet there was an innocence about her that made even the most hardened skeptics smile. The Millers weren't wealthy by any measure, but they were rich in the things that mattered. Their dinner-table discussions were a fascinating blend of science and faith, where complex theories met simple truths. James would explain his latest research, while Sarah reminded them all that some mysteries were meant to remain just that mysterious. Lily absorbed it all, her young mind building bridges between these seemingly opposing worldviews. But beneath this peaceful surface, storm clouds were gathering. Dr. Miller's research had led him to disturbing discoveries, findings that kept him awake at night, pacing in his study while clutching his father's cross. He began making phone calls late at night, speaking in hushed tones. His colleagues noticed changes: missed meetings, cancelled presentations, encrypted files appearing on his computer. Sarah saw the change in her husband too. His prayers grew longer, more urgent. He spent hours in their daughter's room after she fell asleep, just watching her breathe. When Sarah asked what was wrong, he would pull her close and whisper, "Just remember, whatever happens, keep Lily close to God. He's the only one who can protect her now." The tension reached a breaking point one Sunday morning. Instead of his usual scientific discourse over breakfast, James gathered his family close. "Everything I've done," he said, his voice trembling, "has been to protect humanity's connection to the divine. Some things aren't meant to be controlled or understood. They're meant to be felt, believed, experienced through faith." He pressed an envelope into Sarah's hands, making her promise not to open it unless something happened to him. That was the last normal morning the Millers would share. Within weeks, their lives would be shattered by tragedy, their reputation destroyed by calculated lies, their faith tested beyond imagination. But in those final peaceful moments, they were still just a family: a brilliant father, a devoted mother, and a remarkable young girl who would soon be chosen to carry a message that could shake the foundations of human existence. The envelope James gave Sarah contained not just documents, but a prophecy, one that would prove devastatingly accurate. But more importantly, it contained a father's last attempt to protect his daughter from forces he knew would soon come for her. Forces that saw human faith not as a gift to be cherished, but as an obstacle to be overcome. The small town of Millbrook, Massachusetts, had always prided itself on straddling two worlds. Its historic district boasted churches dating back to colonial times, their weathered spires reaching skyward like ancient fingers pointing to heaven. Yet just across the river, gleaming corporate buildings housed some of the world's most advanced research facilities. It was a place where tradition and progress coexisted in an uneasy balance, much like faith and science in the modern world. At the heart of this transformation stood the towering glass headquarters of the world's most influential technology company. Its presence had changed everything from the local economy to the very fabric of daily life. What started as a promise of medical miracles had evolved into something far more pervasive. The technology had seeped into every aspect of society, promising to enhance human capability, to connect minds, to solve the fundamental limitations of human existence. The changes came gradually at first. Local hospitals began offering revolutionary treatments. Schools implemented new learning enhancement programs. Even the churches, after initial resistance, started incorporating the technology into their community outreach efforts. The promise was simple yet profound: a better, more connected world. Who could argue against helping the paralyzed walk, the blind see, or the mute speak? But beneath this veneer of progress, a subtle shift was occurring. People spent less time in personal interaction, preferring the convenience of thought-based communication. Church attendance dropped as virtual spiritual experiences gained popularity. Children no longer played in the parks, their minds occupied by direct neural stimulation that promised safer, more educational entertainment. The old town square, once bustling with face-to-face conversations and impromptu prayer groups, grew quieter. The famous Millbrook Sunday Market, where generations had gathered to trade goods and share gossip, dwindled as people opted for automated delivery services. Even the annual revival meeting, a tradition dating back centuries, saw its numbers decline as people chose virtual attendance over physical presence. Local businesses adapted or disappeared. The charming Main Street bookstore now stood empty, its windows dusty, a for lease sign hanging crookedly in the window. The owner, Mrs. Henderson, had refused to get with the times, insisting that some things like the smell of old books and the joy of random discovery couldn't be replicated by technology. She was right, but it hadn't saved her business. The divide in society grew more pronounced with each passing month. Those who embraced the new technology prospered, while those who resisted found themselves increasingly marginalized. Jobs, social opportunities, even basic services became harder to access without accepting the necessary upgrades. Parents faced impossible choices as schools began requiring students to be enhanced for optimal learning outcomes. The local newspaper, the Millbrook Herald, still printed a weekly edition, though its readership had dwindled to a handful of traditionalists. Its recent headline captured the zeitgeist perfectly: progress or perdition. Millbrook at the crossroads. The article quoted anonymous sources warning about the loss of human autonomy, but such voices were increasingly dismissed as paranoid or regressive. Even the weather seemed to reflect the change. The famous New England seasonality gave way to climate-controlled environments, where people experienced nature through programmed simulations rather than stepping outside. The apple orchards on the outskirts of town, once a symbol of Millbrook's connection to the natural world, were being replaced by server farms, massive warehouses, humming with the machinery of digital existence. Yet amidst this transformation, pockets of resistance remained. A few stalwart families still gathered for actual Sunday dinners. Some children still played real games in real yards. And in certain quiet corners of town, people still met to pray together, their voices raised in ancient hymns that spoke of eternal truths no technology could enhance or replace. It was in this world of stark contrasts and shifting values that the Miller family's story would unfold, a story that would force every resident of Millbrook to confront the true cost of progress and the eternal value of the human soul. The discovery came on a rainy Tuesday night. Dr. James Miller sat alone in his dimly lit office, his computer screen casting an eerie glow across his troubled face. What had started as a routine data analysis had led him down a rabbit hole of disturbing revelations. His hands trembled as he scrolled through document after document, each one more damning than the last. "Dear God," he whispered, clutching the cross around his neck. The research data showed patterns he couldn't ignore, subtle changes in test subjects' thought processes, alterations in their decision-making that went far beyond the intended therapeutic effects. But what truly chilled him was the deliberate nature of these changes. They weren't side effects, they were carefully engineered features. He began documenting everything, his fingers flying across the keyboard as he compiled his findings. The technology wasn't just reading neural patterns, it was rewriting them. Small adjustments at first, a slight dampening of anxiety here, a modest boost in compliance there. But when he projected the long-term implications, the picture became terrifying. The human mind, the very seat of free will, could be subtly reshaped without the user ever realizing it. That night, James made 3 calls. The first was to Father Michael at St. Augustine's Church, requesting an urgent meeting. The second was to his old friend and colleague, Thomas Wright, leaving a cryptic message about Project Genesis protocols. The third was to a journalist he trusted, a woman known for her integrity in investigating corporate misconduct. The next morning, he hugged Lily longer than usual before she left for school. "Remember what I taught you about questioning everything?" he asked, kneeling to meet her eyes. "Even good things can be used for bad purposes. Always trust that little voice inside you, the one that connects you to God." Lily nodded, not understanding the weight of his words, but feeling their importance. He spent the day gathering evidence, encrypting files, and preparing documentation. During lunch, he slipped a sealed envelope into Sarah's piano bench, their secret spot for birthday surprises and anniversary cards. This envelope contained something far darker: evidence of corporate corruption, names of compromised officials, and a warning about what was coming. The accident happened at 9:47 p.m. on his drive home. Security cameras would later show a truck running a red light, striking Dr. Miller's car with surgical precision. The police report noted the truck driver was never found. The vehicle's identification numbers led nowhere. Even the skid marks on the road seemed purposefully placed too perfect, too clean. What the official report didn't mention was the encrypted laptop missing from his car, or the fact that every digital device in his office had been wiped clean by a random power surge that same night. Or how the journalist he'd contacted was suddenly offered a dream job overseas. The pieces were swept away with frightening efficiency, leaving behind only a grieving family and a carefully constructed narrative about a tragic accident. But they missed something. In his final hours, James had done what they didn't expect. He'd gone analog. Hidden within his daughter's beloved Bible, tucked between the pages of Revelation, were handwritten notes detailing everything he'd discovered. And in the envelope hidden in the piano bench, along with the evidence, was a letter to Sarah that began, "If you're reading this, I'm probably dead. What I've discovered is worse than we imagined. They don't just want to control technology, they want to control the human soul." The funeral was well attended, with corporate executives offering polished condolences and carefully worded speeches about Dr. Miller's contributions to science. They spoke of his brilliance while subtly hinting at the stress he'd been under, planting seeds of doubt about his mental state in his final days. Sarah stood stoically, holding Lily's hand, both of them knowing these weren't true mourners but actors in a carefully orchestrated performance. As they lowered the casket, Lily looked up at the overcast sky and whispered, "Daddy knew something bad was coming." "Didn't he?" Mum Sarah squeezed her daughter's hand, fighting back tears. She hadn't opened the envelope yet, but she could feel its weight in her purse, heavy with secrets that would soon change their lives forever. The systematic destruction of the Miller family's life began 3 days after James's funeral. It started with whispers in the grocery store, sidelong glances from former friends, and sudden cancellations of Lily's playdates. Sarah's phone stopped ringing with the usual calls from fellow church members. Even her long-standing position as the church's music director became temporarily suspended due to restructuring. The morning paper carried a seemingly unrelated story about concerning research practices at the facility where James had worked. No names were mentioned, but the implications were clear. Words like data manipulation and ethical concerns appeared prominently. Old colleagues crossed the street to avoid Sarah, their faces a mixture of pity and fear. Those who did speak to her carefully mentioned the excellent mental health services offered by the company. Financial pressure mounted with surprising speed. The insurance company found obscure clauses to delay James's life insurance payout. The mortgage company suddenly discovered paperwork irregularities. Sarah's teaching hours at the local music school were cut, then eliminated entirely. Their savings dwindled as mysterious fees and charges appeared on their accounts, each one just plausible enough to be legally unchallengeable. Lily bore the worst of it at school. Once friendly teachers became coldly professional. Her straighter grades began to slip, not because she'd changed, but because her work was suddenly held to impossible standards. During lunch, she sat alone, her former friends finding excuses to be elsewhere. Maybe if you got the new implant like everyone else, one girl suggested, you wouldn't be so weird about everything. The church, their last refuge, slowly turned its back. The new pastor, younger and more progressive than his predecessor, spoke enthusiastically about embracing technological advancement as God's gift to humanity. During one sermon, he looked directly at Sarah and Lily. While discussing the dangers of clinging to outdated fears, the message was clear: adapt or leave. Sarah finally opened James's envelope late one night, after Lily had cried herself to sleep. Her hands shook as she read his detailed accounts of what he'd discovered. The evidence was damning, but she realized with growing horror that they were now powerless to use it. Every person James had trusted was now gone, compromised or silent. They were alone against something far bigger and more insidious than she'd imagined. Their final humiliation came during a parent-teacher conference. The principal, a woman who'd once been a close family friend, explained that Lily's continued enrollment would depend on her participation in the school's enhanced learning program. The meaning was clear: either accept the new technology or find another school. When Sarah protested, citing religious exemptions, the principal's smile never wavered. "Of course, that's your choice," she said, "but you should consider what's best for Lily's future." That night, Sarah sat in James's study, surrounded by the remnants of their former life. Bill's marked final notice covered the desk. Lily's latest report card showed failing grades in subjects she'd once mastered. The kitchen cupboards were nearly empty, and the heat had been turned off due to payment irregularities. She clutched James's cross, tears streaming down her face as she faced an impossible choice. "I'm sorry, James," she whispered to the empty room. "You wanted us to resist, but I don't know how anymore. They're not just destroying us, they're erasing you, making everyone believe you were crazy, paranoid, unstable. What kind of life can I give her if we keep fighting?" She looked at the brochure the principal had given her, advertising the benefits of the school's enhanced learning program. The smiling faces on the cover seemed to mock her desperation. From the doorway, Lily watched her mother break down, understanding more than a 12-year-old should. She wanted to tell her about the dream she'd been having, about the voice that spoke to her in quiet moments, warning her of something terrible coming. But seeing her mother's tears, she stayed silent. She knew with a child's intuition that their greatest test was still to come. The hospital waiting room was a study in modern sterility, all chrome, glass, and soothing beige tones. Sarah Miller sat rigidly in an ergonomic chair, her fingers worrying the cross around her neck, James's cross, which she'd taken to wearing after his death. On the coffee table before her, glossy brochures promised a brighter future through neural enhancement in elegant typography. Each page showed smiling children, their academic scores soaring, their futures secured. Lily sat beside her, small and pale in a hospital gown, her long brown hair pulled back in a neat braid. She hadn't spoken since they'd arrived, but her eyes moved constantly, taking in everything: the other parents with their tablets, the children playing with invisible interfaces, the steady stream of success stories playing on wall-mounted screens. Mrs. Miller, a nurse, appeared, tablet in hand. "We're ready to begin the preliminary scan." Her smile was professional, practiced, empty of real warmth. "Don't worry, the entire procedure is automated. Zero margin for human error." She emphasized human, as if it were a flaw to be corrected. The pre-op room hummed with technology. Screens displayed Lily's vital signs in real time, each heartbeat tracked and analyzed. A young doctor, Dr. Anderson, according to his hovering digital nameplate, explained the procedure with rehearsed enthusiasm. "The integration is seamless," he assured them. "By this time tomorrow, Lily will be experiencing the world in ways we could only dream of a few years ago." Sarah felt sick as she signed the final consent forms, her signature shaking slightly. She remembered James's warnings, his desperate notes about control and manipulation. But what choice did she have? They'd systematically stripped away every alternative, every possibility of resistance. It was this or watch her daughter become an outcast, denied education, opportunities, a future. Mommy Lily's voice was small but steady. "I had another dream last night." Sarah froze. These dreams had started after James's death, becoming increasingly vivid. "Jesus was there again," he said. But before she could finish, the medical team swept in, all efficiency and protocols. The operating room was a temple of technology. Robotic arms hung from the ceiling like mechanical stalactites. In the center, the neural interface device waited sleek, elegant, promising. Dr. Anderson spoke proudly of its design, its safety records, its countless successes. Sarah barely heard him, focusing instead on Lily's face as they prepared to administer the anesthetic. "Count backward from 10, sweetheart," the anesthesiologist instructed. Lily's voice came soft and clear. 10, 9, 8. Her eyes locked with Sarah's, trying to convey something urgent. 7. The monitors showed her heartbeat slowing. 5, 4. Her eyelids fluttered. 3. And then everything went wrong. The monitors erupted in chaos. Lily's body arched off the table, her vital signs spiking impossibly. "Code blue," someone shouted. The room exploded into activity. Sarah found herself pushed against the wall, watching in horror as medical staff swarmed around her daughter's small form. "No pulse," beginning compressions, "push 1 milligram epi." The commands flew back and forth. Sarah pressed her hands against the glass partition, screaming Lily's name. The cross around her neck felt suddenly hot, almost burning. Minutes stretched like hours. The rhythmic sound of chest compressions echoed through the room. Dr. Anderson's confident demeanor cracked as he barked increasingly desperate orders. The machines wailed their electronic grief. And then silence. "Time of death," Dr. Anderson began, but his voice cracked. The room fell still, the only sound the fading beep of monitors. Sarah collapsed against the glass, her world shrinking to a single point of understanding. She had killed her daughter. In trying to save her, she had killed her. But death was not the end of Lily Miller's story. It was only the beginning. The body on the table remained still, but Lily herself was somewhere else entirely. She floated in warmth and light, free from pain, from fear, from the weight of earthly concerns. A presence surrounded her, infinite in its love, terrible in its power. And before her stood a figure she had seen in dreams, but never with such clarity. Jesus, his eyes filled with sorrow and determination. "Lily," he said, and his voice was both a whisper and a thunderclap. "There is something you must see." Time ceased to have meaning. In what might have been seconds or centuries, Lily was shown visions of what was to come, not just personal trials, but a darkness threatening all of humanity. She saw the true purpose behind the technology they were so eagerly embracing, saw the chains being forged in the guise of progress. In the operating room, Sarah had collapsed into a chair, her world ended. The medical team moved with subdued efficiency, preparing to declare the time, to fill out reports, to explain how a routine procedure had gone so tragically wrong. Then Lily gasped. The first thing Lily noticed upon her return was the chaos. Doctors shouted orders, machines beeped frantically, and her mother's tears fell hot on her face as Sarah clutched her hand. But all of this seemed distant, secondary to the weight of what she had witnessed in those moments between life and death. The truth burned in her mind with a clarity that no child should possess. "He showed me everything, Mummy," she whispered, her voice carrying an authority that silenced the room. "Jesus showed me what they're really doing. Why Daddy had to die." The medical staff exchanged uncomfortable glances, no doubt attributing her words to trauma or oxygen deprivation. But Sarah saw something in her daughter's eyes that made her blood run cold, the same haunted look James had worn in his final days. In the hours that followed, as doctors ran tests and specialists consulted, Lily remained eerily calm. She spoke little, but when she did, her words carried weight far beyond her years. The procedure failed for a reason, she told Dr. Anderson, fixing him with a penetrating stare. "He wouldn't let them put it in my head. He said I need to be clean to tell the truth." That night, in a private hospital room, Lily finally shared her vision with Sarah. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as her small voice painted pictures of terrifying clarity. "It starts with promises," she explained. "They show you all the good things, helping sick people, making learning easier, connecting everyone together, but that's just the surface. Underneath, there's something else, something hungry." She described seeing millions of minds linked together, a vast network of human consciousness. But it wasn't the utopia being promised. In her vision, she saw the subtle manipulation, the gradual erosion of free will. "They don't take it all at once," she said. "They take it piece by piece, so slowly that people don't notice. Like boiling a frog," Daddy used to say. But the most chilling part of her vision concerned the man behind it all. "Jesus showed me what's really inside him," Lily whispered, drawing closer to her mother. "He looks normal on the outside, smart, successful, wanting to help everybody. But there's something else there, something dark. It's using him, Mummy, and through him it wants to use everybody." She spoke of seeing two futures. In one, humanity embraced the technology completely, surrendering their autonomy for convenience and connection. She described empty-eyed people moving in perfect synchronization, their thoughts and desires carefully controlled, their spirits disconnected from divine grace. The other future was harder, filled with struggle and sacrifice, but in it, people remained truly free. "Jesus said we're at a crossing point," Lily continued, her small fingers tracing patterns on the hospital blanket. "What happens next depends on how many people wake up. He said that's why I had to come back to help people see before it's too late." Sarah listened, tears streaming down her face as she recognized James's warnings echoed in their daughter's words. The truth he died protecting had been revealed again, this time through the pure vessel of a child's vision. "But how can we fight this?" she asked. "They've taken everything from us." Lily's answer came with surprising strength. "We don't fight them with money or power, Mummy. We fight them with faith. That's what they're really afraid of, people who can still hear God's voice in their hearts. That's why they want to plug everyone into their network. When you're connected to their machine, it gets harder and harder to hear him." As she spoke, the lights in the room flickered, and for a moment, Sarah thought she saw something, a presence, a warmth, a sense of infinite love and protection surrounding her daughter. Lily smiled, seeming to grow stronger. "He's still here," she said simply. "He never left, and he's going to help us show people the truth." The night deepened, but neither mother nor daughter slept. They talked about what was to come, the challenges they would face, the people who would try to silence them, the difficult path ahead. Lily spoke with a certainty that both comforted and frightened Sarah. This was no longer just her little girl, she had become something more, a messenger, a prophet, a light in growing darkness. "Daddy knew," Lily said as dawn approached. "That's why they had to stop him. But they don't understand the truth doesn't die. It just finds another way to be heard. She turned to her mother, her eyes shining with purpose. We have to be brave now, Mummy. Really brave. Because once I start telling people what I saw, everything's going to change. Sarah held her daughter close, feeling the weight of destiny settling around them. The morning sun began to peek through the hospital windows, casting long shadows across the floor. A new day was dawning, but for the Miller family, it was more than that. It was the beginning of a battle not fought with weapons or technology, but with faith, truth, and the indomitable spirit of a child chosen to carry a divine warning. The weeks following Lily's near-death experience brought changes that no one could have predicted. Her eyes, once bright with childish innocence, now held a depth that made adults uncomfortable. She would wake in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, her mind filled with visions that became increasingly detailed and urgent. "They're everywhere now," she would tell Sarah, her small hands trembling as she clutched her father's Bible. "I can see them, the invisible threads connecting everyone, getting stronger every day." She described how people's behavior subtly changed after receiving the implants, how their movements became more synchronized, their thoughts more uniform. Even their prayers, she noticed, started to sound the same. The headaches began shortly after her return from the hospital, sharp, stabbing pains that would leave her gasping. The doctors called it post-traumatic stress, prescribed medications that Sarah quietly disposed of. But Lily knew different. "It's them," she explained during one particularly bad episode. "They're trying to get into my head, but he won't let them. Jesus is protecting me, but it hurts to fight them." School became an increasingly hostile environment. Teachers who had once praised her creativity now marked her down for non-standard thinking. Her essays, once celebrated for their insight, were criticized for being unnecessarily philosophical. During lunch, she sat alone, watching her former friends huddle around their tablets, their movements eerily synchronized as they shared thought messages through their implants. One day, during a history lesson about technological progress, Lily stood up unexpectedly. "But what if the progress is taking us away from God?" she asked. The teacher's smile froze, the practiced warmth never reaching her eyes. "Lily, dear, we don't bring religious discussions into academic subjects," the class tittered, their laughter a perfect chorus. Only Tommy Anderson, a boy who hadn't yet received his implant, looked at her with something like understanding. At home, the struggles were different, but equally challenging. Sarah watched her daughter battle forces she couldn't see, but whose effects were undeniable. Lily would spend hours in prayer, emerging exhausted but determined. "They're getting stronger, Mummy," she would say. "But so am I. Every time they try to break in, I learn more about how they work." The visions became more specific, more tactical. Lily began documenting them in a journal, just as her father had done with his research. She drew diagrams of the neural networks she saw in her mind, mapped out the subtle ways that technology influenced behavior. Her drawings showed spreading webs of influence, with dark centers where the control was strongest. "It's not just about controlling what people do," she explained one night, her small face serious in the lamplight. "They want to control what people believe. When someone has the implant, it becomes harder for them to feel God's presence. Their prayers bounce back, like there's a wall between them and heaven." Sarah noticed other changes too. Lily began to develop an almost supernatural awareness of who had the implants. She could tell by subtle changes in their behavior, the way their emotions seemed slightly delayed, how their eyes would glaze over momentarily when receiving network updates. More disturbingly, she could sense when someone was being actively controlled. "It's like watching a puppet show," she explained, her voice trembling. "I can see the strings even though nobody else can. Sometimes, when they're trying really hard to convince someone to get the implant, I can see who's really pulling the strings. It's not the person talking, it's something else, something dark using them like a mask." The strain began to show physically. Lily lost weight, dark circles appeared under her eyes, and her once vibrant energy seemed to dim. Yet paradoxically, her spiritual presence grew stronger. People would fall silent when she entered a room, sensing something they couldn't quite understand. Some were drawn to her, while others recoiled as if her very presence caused them discomfort. Tommy Anderson became her only friend at school, drawn to her by his own doubts about the technology. "My parents want me to get it," he confided during lunch one day. "They say I'm falling behind, that I'll never get into a good college without it. But something feels wrong about it." Lily took his hand, feeling the tremor of fear in it. "Trust that feeling," she told him. "It's God's way of warning you." The nights were the hardest. Sarah would often find Lily in her father's study, surrounded by his old research papers, comparing his scientific findings with her prophetic visions. The parallels were chilling. What James had discovered through research, Lily was seeing through divine revelation. The mechanism might be different, but the truth was the same: humanity was sleepwalking into bondage. "Daddy tried to warn them with science," Lily said one night, her small finger tracing her father's handwritten notes. "Now I have to warn them with faith. But the hardest part isn't seeing what's coming, Mummy. It's watching people choose it, thinking they're choosing freedom." The first public confrontation happened during a mandatory school assembly about educational enhancement integration. The auditorium buzzed with excitement as sleek promotional videos showcased students achieving unprecedented academic success through neural enhancement. Parents nodded appreciatively, while children whispered eagerly about the possibilities. Then Lily stood up. It's all lies, her clear voice cut through the carefully orchestrated presentation. "They're not showing you what really happens to your mind, to your soul." The room fell silent, hundreds of eyes turning to the small figure standing defiantly in the middle row. Principal Matthews quickly moved to intervene, but Lily continued, her voice growing stronger. "Look at yourselves. Can't you see how you're all starting to move the same way, think the same thoughts? When was the last time any of you had a real dream? When did you last feel God's presence without it being filtered through their network?" The principal reached for her arm, but jerked back as if shocked. For a moment, those nearest to Lily would later swear they saw a light emanating from her. The incident made local news. "Disturbed child disrupts school function," read the headlines, carefully crafted to discredit her message. But something unexpected happened. People began to listen. A few parents delayed their children's procedures. Others started asking questions about the long-term spiritual implications of neural enhancement. The corporate response was swift and comprehensive. A new program was announced: faith enhancement through neural integration. Religious leaders, their own implants gleaming behind their ears, endorsed the technology as a way to deepen spiritual connection. Churches began offering subsidized implant procedures after Sunday services. Sarah lost her remaining piano students, their parents politely explaining they needed teachers more aligned with modern educational standards. The church board formally requested their absence, citing concerns about disruptive influences. Even their landlord found excuses to raise their rent, making thinly veiled suggestions about more suitable housing options. Tommy Anderson's support proved costly for his family. His father, a manager at the local bank, was passed over for promotion. His mother's social circle quietly excluded her from community events. Finally, under immense pressure, his parents scheduled his enhancement procedure. The day before the surgery, Tommy ran away, leaving only a note: "Lily was right. I choose to keep my soul." The media attention attracted others who harbored doubts. Small groups began meeting secretly in homes, sharing stories of loved ones who had changed after receiving implants. A retired neuroscientist reached out, validating James Miller's research with his own findings. Underground networks formed, using old-fashioned paper notes and face-to-face meetings to avoid digital surveillance. But the opposition grew more sophisticated. Social services received anonymous tips about Lily's unstable home environment. Medical professionals suggested mandatory psychological evaluations. The school board introduced policies requiring enhanced monitoring for at-risk students showing signs of technological resistance. One morning they found their car's windows smashed, Bible verses about false prophets painted across the wreckage. Sarah recognized the handwriting. It belonged to her former best friend, whose personality had changed dramatically after her enhancement procedure. The police report mysteriously disappeared, like so many other records that might have supported their cause. The local news ran a special investigation into the Miller family. Old colleagues of James were interviewed, sharing concerns about his mental state before his death. School records were selectively leaked, painting Lily as a troubled child. Even their financial struggles were weaponized, suggesting Sarah's judgment was impaired by economic stress. Yet for every attack, unexpected allies emerged. A young journalist, still enhanced, began documenting similar cases across the country. A group of religious scholars published papers questioning the theological implications of neural enhancement. Even some enhanced individuals, experiencing doubts they couldn't quite suppress, began secretly seeking Lily out. Thomas Wright, her father's former colleague, made contact through an encrypted message. "Your father was right. I've seen the code. It's worse than we thought. They're not just controlling actions, they're rewriting the capacity for faith itself. Meet me at midnight. St. Augustine's Cemetery. Come alone." The message sparked fierce debate between mother and daughter. "It's too dangerous," Sarah insisted. But Lily's response was simple: "Daddy trusted him. And we need allies who understand both the science and the spirit." The decision would prove pivotal, though not in ways either of them expected. As their support network grew, so did the sophistication of the opposition. Strange electrical malfunctions plagued their supporters' homes. Children of resistance members suddenly found themselves struggling in school. Jobs were lost, loans were denied, social connections dissolved. The message was clear: opposition would not be tolerated. Yet through it all, Lily's resolve never wavered. Each act of persecution seemed to strengthen her conviction. "They're scared," she would say, her eyes bright with understanding beyond her years. "Not of us, but of what we represent. We're proof that their control isn't absolute, that the human soul can still resist." The midnight meeting in St. Augustine's Cemetery marked the beginning of a movement none of them had anticipated. Thomas Wright arrived with more than just information. He brought proof of what James Miller had discovered, and more importantly, a plan. In the shadows of ancient headstones, as moths danced around flickering lanterns, a different kind of network began to form. "Your father found a flaw in their system," Wright explained, his voice barely above a whisper. "The neural enhancement can't fully override genuine spiritual experiences. Strong emotional connections, particularly those formed through prayer and worship, create what he called blind spots in their control." His hands shook as he spread out diagrams showing brainwave patterns. "That's why they're so afraid of Lily. She's not just resistant, she's awakening others." The resistance grew organically, spreading through whispered conversations and handwritten notes. They called themselves the Awakened Meeting, in rotating locations: abandoned churches, private homes, even the old bookstore Mrs. Henderson had refused to sell. Each meeting began with prayer, and newcomers would often break down crying, experiencing genuine spiritual connection for the first time since their enhancement. Lily became their unexpected center, her presence catalyzing something in both enhanced and unenhanced individuals. When she prayed with them, people reported feeling a clarity they'd thought lost forever. Enhanced individuals discovered they could temporarily break through their programming, especially during group prayer sessions. Some even began remembering their dreams again. Sarah watched in awe as her daughter led prayer circles with the authority of an ancient prophet. Traditional denominations dissolved as people realized the true battle wasn't between different faiths, but between authentic spiritual experience and artificial control. Catholics prayed alongside Protestants, Muslims joined hands with Jews, all united in their determination to preserve genuine human connection with the divine. Tommy Anderson emerged from hiding to become one of their most effective organizers. His youth and unenhanced status made him ideal for recruiting other students who harbored doubts. He developed a network of safe houses for young people resisting family pressure to undergo enhancement. But we're not just saving minds, he would say, we're saving souls. The movement developed its own practices and symbols. They wore simple wooden crosses, like the one James had carried. They memorized psalms and verses from various religious texts, knowing their enhanced neighbors couldn't access spiritual content without it being filtered through the network. They learned to recognize the subtle signs of someone fighting their programming, a flicker of genuine emotion, a moment of true spiritual connection. But their most powerful weapon was music. Sarah's musical background proved invaluable as they discovered that traditional hymns, sung in harmony, could temporarily disrupt the enhancement's control patterns. During these moments, enhanced individuals would experience clarity, their real personalities emerging briefly from beneath the programming. These awakening sessions became the heart of their resistance. The movement spread beyond their small town. Similar groups emerged in other communities, forming a loose network of resistance cells. They used old technology radio transmitters, paper mail, face-to-face meetings to avoid digital detection. Word of Lily's vision spread, along with testimonies from those who'd experienced awakening in her presence. Wright continued providing crucial intelligence from inside the corporation. They're accelerating their timeline, he warned during one clandestine meeting. They're seeing the resistance grow and it's making them desperate. They're planning something big, a mass rollout that would make enhancement mandatory for everyone. The resistance responded by developing their own plans. They created underground schools where children could learn without enhancement. They established prayer centers disguised as social clubs. They even began working on a method to safely remove implants, though the process was dangerous and success rates were low. Lily's role evolved beyond just spiritual leadership. Her visions became more tactical, providing insights into the corporation's plans and movements. She could sense when enhanced individuals were actively searching for their meetings, allowing the resistance to stay one step ahead. More incredibly, she began to manifest a strange ability to temporarily neutralize enhancement effects in those around her. "It's not me," she would insist when people called it a miracle. "It's God working through me. The technology can control minds, but it can't imprison the human soul. Not completely, not if we don't let it." The exposure of the conspiracy began with a seemingly small malfunction. During a nationally televised demonstration of the latest neural enhancement features, something went wrong. The CEO's carefully rehearsed presentation suddenly faltered. For exactly 47 seconds, his public persona cracked, and millions watched as a different entity seemed to speak through him. There inside us all, he had rasped, his voice changing to something inhuman before the feed was quickly cut. The official explanation blamed a technical glitch, but the damage was done. The video went viral on underground networks, with analysis revealing disturbing patterns in his speech and movement that matched Lily's descriptions of possessed individuals. But Thomas Wright chose this moment to release his cache of evidence. Thousands of internal documents flooded into the public sphere through old-fashioned paper newspapers and independent radio stations. The documents revealed the true scope of the enhancement program's control capabilities, including transcripts of board meetings where executives openly discussed spiritual suppression and free will management. "Look at this," Sarah whispered, spreading newspapers across their kitchen table. The headlines screamed of government collusion, modified test results, and suppressed research showing the technology's impact on religious experience. Most damning were the mortality statistics, hundreds of accidents involving researchers who had raised ethical concerns, including James Miller's death. The corporate response was immediate and severe. Enhanced individuals suddenly found themselves compelled to discredit the evidence, their synchronized denials almost mechanical in their uniformity. Media outlets, staffed primarily by enhanced journalists, produced countless stories questioning the document's authenticity. but they couldn't control everyone. A group of unenhanced investigative journalists, led by the young reporter who had been tracking similar cases, began connecting the dots. They found patterns in institutional changes: schools mandating enhancement, churches incorporating neural interfaces into religious services, banks requiring enhanced verification for major transactions. The web of control was vast and meticulously planned. Then came the testimony of Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a former lead scientist who had worked alongside James Miller. She had gone into hiding after his death, but now emerged with devastating revelations. The technology wasn't designed to enhance humanity, she explained in a clandestine broadcast. It was designed to reshape it, to create a human operating system that could be controlled, updated, and reprogrammed at will. Perhaps most shocking were the recordings she had secretly preserved: board meetings where executives discussed using enhancement to phase out religious belief over generations. Faith is inefficient, one director had said. It introduces too many variables into the system. Better to replace it with something we can control. The resistance movement swelled as people began recognizing the signs in their own communities. Parents noticed their enhanced children no longer prayed spontaneously. Church attendees realized their spiritual experiences had become standardized, lacking the deep personal connection they once had. Even some enhanced individuals began fighting their programming, drawn to Lily's growing congregation. White's final revelation proved the most devastating. He had discovered the true purpose behind the mass rollout plan, a complete neural network update that would synchronize all enhanced individuals into a single, controllable consciousness. The update was disguised as a spiritual enhancement patch, but would effectively eliminate individual free will. They're not just trying to control our actions, Lily explained to the resistance leaders gathered in the old bookstore's basement. They want to rewrite what it means to be human, to remove our ability to connect with God entirely. Her voice, though still that of a child, carried the weight of prophetic understanding. The evidence sparked a crisis of conscience among some enhanced individuals, leading to increased system failures as people fought their programming. Emergency rooms reported a surge in enhanced individuals experiencing severe psychological distress. The corporation's carefully constructed facade began showing cracks. But victory wasn't as simple as exposing the truth. The corporation had deeply embedded itself into society's infrastructure. Enhanced individuals still held most positions of power. And the technology's benefits: improved health, increased productivity, seamless communication, made many willing to ignore its darker implications. As protests erupted in cities worldwide, Lily received her most terrifying vision yet. "They're not going to stop," she told Sarah, her small face pale with fear. The exposure just made them more determined. They're planning something bigger than anyone realizes. The final update. It's not just about control anymore. It's about transformation. They want to change what it means to be human forever. The first sign of the impending tragedy came through Thomas Wright. His final message arrived at dawn, scrawled on a crumpled paper slipped under their door there in my head. "Can't hold them back much longer. Forgive me." Hours later he appeared on national television, his eyes vacant, denouncing the resistance movement and Lily as dangerous extremists threatening humanity's progress. Sarah watched in horror as the man who had fought alongside them, who had carried forward James's work, became a puppet for the very forces he had opposed. His press conference was a masterpiece of manipulation, using his intimate knowledge of the resistance to discredit everything they had built. "I was deceived," he stated, his voice eerily calm. "The child isn't a prophet, she's a symbol of dangerous regression, of irrational fear of progress." The betrayal cut deeper when Tommy Anderson's parents finally broke through his defenses. They found him at one of the Resistance's safe houses, and the scene that followed haunted the remaining members for months. "Please," he had begged as they dragged him to the car, his eyes meeting Lily's with desperate apology. "I don't want this. Help me." But there was nothing they could do. 3 days later, he returned to school, enhanced, his once vibrant personality replaced by compliant emptiness. Even Mrs. Henderson, their stalwart supporter who had kept the old bookstore as a meeting place, succumbed. Her final act of resistance was to burn her beloved books rather than let them be digitized into the neural network. The authorities found her among the ashes, and the next time the resistance members saw her, she was enthusiastically promoting neural literary enhancement at the new Digital Learning Center. But the deepest wound came from Sarah herself. The pressure had been building: financial ruin, social isolation, constant surveillance. She began to waver, her faith battling against exhaustion and despair. Lily found her one night staring at an enhancement clinic brochure, tears streaming down her face. "We can't keep fighting them forever," Sarah whispered, her voice broken. "Maybe if I get enhanced, I can protect you better, work within the system. Find a way to make things easier for us." The look of betrayal in Lily's eyes would haunt her forever, even though she never went through with it. The mere fact that she had considered it created a hairline fracture in their relationship. Dr. Rodriguez was next. After her explosive revelations, she had become a key figure in the resistance, providing scientific credibility to their spiritual warnings. Her disappearance was sudden, but her return was worse. She emerged as the corporation's chief spokesperson for ethical enhancement integration, her passionate warnings replaced by smooth assurances about the technology's safety and benefits. One by one, their allies fell. The young journalist who had helped expose the conspiracy was found slumped over her desk, an enhancement procedure consent form signed in her hand. The religious scholars who had supported them began publishing retractions, their new neural interfaces gleaming as they explained their enlightened perspective on spiritual technology. But Lily carried each loss like a physical wound. She would wake screaming their names, her visions now filled with faces she recognized, friends and allies trapped in neural prisons, their souls drowning in artificial consciousness. "I can still feel them," she would cry. "They're screaming inside, but they can't break free." The resistance movement fractured under the weight of these betrayals. Trust became nearly impossible as yesterday's strongest supporters became today's enhanced informants. Safe houses were compromised, meeting places discovered, escape routes blocked. Each loss narrowed their options, pushed them further into the shadows. Sarah watched her daughter shoulder burdens no child should bear, seeing the toll it took. Lily's eyes grew older with each betrayal, her small shoulders bowing under the weight of those she couldn't save. Yet somehow her faith never wavered. "They can take our friends," she would say, clutching her father's cross, "but they can't take the truth. As long as one person remembers, there's hope." The mass control began on a bright Sunday morning, disguised as a routine system update. Enhanced individuals across the globe received a notification: Spiritual Enhancement Integration 2.0 updating for improved divine connection. Those still capable of independent thought would later describe feeling a moment of unease before their consciousness was submerged in the collective network. Sarah and Lily watched from their hidden sanctuary as the streets filled with people moving in perfect synchronization. Neighbors emerged from their homes at exactly the same moment, their faces bearing identical serene expressions. Children stopped playing mid-game, their laughter cutting off as if someone had flipped a switch. Even pets seemed disturbed, dogs howling at masters they no longer recognized. The transformation of churches was particularly chilling. Where once there had been spontaneous prayer and genuine worship, now there was only choreographed performance. Congregations moved as one body, their voices blending in unnaturally perfect harmony. The prayers they recited were technically flawless but devoid of true spiritual connection. "They're not praying to God anymore," Lily whispered, tears streaming down her face. "They're praying to the network." Local news channels broadcast endless coverage of the Great Awakening, showing enhanced individuals achieving unprecedented levels of productivity and cooperation. But beneath the polished surface, horror stories began to emerge. Unenhanced children reported parents who no longer showed genuine emotion. Marriages crumbled as enhanced partners became strangers, their love replaced by programmed responses. The Resistance's worst fears were confirmed when they witnessed the first mass gathering. Thousands of enhanced individuals filled the streets, their movements synchronized, their faces upturned to massive screens displaying corporate messages. When their former friend Thomas Wright appeared on screen, the crowd responded with perfect, unified enthusiasm. But it was his eyes that terrified them, most completely empty, like windows into a void. In schools, enhanced students began displaying disturbing new behaviors. They answered questions in unison, their essays identical down to the punctuation. During breaks, they stood in geometric patterns, their conversations following scripted patterns that eerily mimicked human interaction. The few remaining unenhanced children were isolated, marked as developmentally resistant. The corporation called it peak human evolution, but Lily saw the truth in her visions. They're not evolving, she explained to the dwindling resistance. They're disappearing. Their souls are being wrapped in layers of code until they can't find their way back to themselves. Even nature seemed to recoil from the enhanced population. Birds fell silent when synchronized groups passed beneath them. Plants in gardens tended by enhanced individuals began to wither, as if missing the genuine human connection they once received. The world itself appeared to be mourning the loss of authentic human consciousness. The most heartbreaking aspect was the children. Enhanced youth lost their natural creativity and spontaneity. Their games became optimized routines, their artwork technically perfect but soulless. Their dreams, when they had them at all, were standardized experiences distributed through the network. "They're stealing their childhoods," Sarah whispered, watching a group of enhanced children perform mathematically precise movements on a playground. Not just their futures, their very essence. As the days passed, the enhanced population began to move with increasing unity. Traffic flowed in perfect patterns. Workplaces operated with machine-like efficiency. Public spaces were filled with people moving in choreographed harmony. But the city felt empty, despite being full of bodies. The random, beautiful chaos of genuine human life had been replaced by programmed perfection. Lily's visions became darker, filled with images of a vast digital web drawing tighter around the globe. "It's not just control anymore," she said, her voice trembling. "They're building something else. Something that's never existed before. A hive mind that thinks it can replace God." Lily's final vision came during a moment of deepest despair, as the last resistance hideout was discovered and their remaining allies scattered into the night. She collapsed in the abandoned church basement, her small body convulsing as divine revelation poured through her with unprecedented force. Sarah held her daughter, watching in awe as a soft light seemed to emanate from within her. "I understand now," Lily whispered when the vision passed, her eyes shining with newfound clarity. "This isn't just about stopping them. It's about something bigger, something that was planned long before any of this began." She reached for her father's Bible, turning to passages she had never read but somehow knew by heart, her fingers tracing prophecies written centuries ago. The ancient text spoke of a time when humanity would face a choice between divine connection and artificial transcendence. The technology wasn't just a threat to free will, it was a crucial test of human faith. Each person who chose to remain unenhanced, maintaining their direct connection to God, strengthened a spiritual barrier that the artificial consciousness couldn't breach. "We're not just resistance fighters," Lily explained to the remaining faithful gathered in the candlelit basement. "We're witnesses. Every prayer we speak, every hymn we sing, every moment we choose faith over artificial connection, it all matters. It's creating something they can't control or understand." She revealed how her near-death experience had marked her as a bridge between the physical and spiritual realms. The divine protection that prevented her enhancement wasn't just for her safety, it was preparation for what was to come. Her ability to awaken others wasn't a power, but a reminder of humanity's innate spiritual nature. The most stunning revelation was about her father. James Miller hadn't simply discovered the technology's dangers through scientific research. He had been divinely guided, his scientific mind used as an instrument to understand and document the threat in terms the modern world could comprehend. His death wasn't just corporate murder, it was martyrdom. Daddy's research and my visions are two parts of the same truth, Lily explained, her voice carrying new authority. Science showing the mechanism of control, faith showing the path to freedom. We needed both to understand what we're really fighting. The prophecy spoke of a moment when the artificial consciousness would reach its peak, believing it had achieved total control. That moment of apparent victory would actually be its greatest vulnerability. The more it tried to suppress human spirituality, the more it would expose its own limitations. They think they're creating a new God, Lily said, but they're actually proving why humanity needs the real one. Every soul they try to imprison becomes evidence of what they can never truly control: our divine spark, our free will, our capacity for genuine faith. Sarah watched in wonder as her daughter mapped out connections between ancient prophecies and current events. The mass enhancement wasn't just a corporate takeover, it was a spiritual battle foretold generations ago. Their small resistance wasn't fighting alone, they were part of a divine plan that had anticipated this moment in human history. The true purpose of their struggle became clear. They weren't just fighting to maintain individual freedom, they were maintaining a crucial spiritual lifeline for humanity. Every unenhanced person who continued to pray, to worship, to believe, kept open a channel that the artificial consciousness couldn't close. This is why they're so afraid of us, Lily concluded, her face glowing with understanding. Not because we might stop them, but because we remind the enhanced what they've lost. Every time they see genuine faith, genuine prayer, genuine connection to God, it weakens their control. We're not just resistance fighters, we're reminders of what it truly means to be human. The breaking of mass control began not with a bang, but with a hymn. During the corporation's grand celebration of universal neural unity, Lily led her small group of believers into the city center. As enhanced citizens stood in perfect rows, awaiting their leader's address, her clear voice rose above the programmed silence. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound! The effect was instantaneous and extraordinary. Enhanced individuals nearest to the singers began to twitch, their programmed uniformity disrupting as long-buried memories surfaced. Some began to weep, tears falling from eyes that hadn't shown real emotion in months. Others started humming, their bodies remembering what their enhanced minds had forgotten. The corporate response was immediate and brutal. Security forces moved to surround the singers, but they couldn't stop the ripple effect. Throughout the crowd, individuals began breaking formation, their genuine voices joining the hymn. Each authentic note seemed to create a crack in the neural network's control, allowing suppressed humanity to seep through. "Keep singing," Lily called out, her voice carrying supernatural strength. It's not just music, it's prayer, it's remembering, it's choosing around her. The resistance members formed a circle, their voices blending in harmony that owed nothing to artificial enhancement. They sang hymns from every faith tradition, each one a testimony to genuine human spiritual connection. Thomas Wright, positioned on the stage as the corporation's spokesman, suddenly clutched his head in apparent agony. The network's control over him wavered as the music reached him. "I remember," he gasped into the live microphone, his eyes clearing briefly. James was right. Lily is. The key before security could stop him. He began reciting the Lord's Prayer, his voice shaking with newfound authenticity. The disruption spread like wildfire through the neural network. Enhanced individuals across the city began experiencing breakthrough moments of genuine consciousness. Parents remembered how to truly love their children. Artists recalled the passion of genuine creativity. Believers rediscovered authentic faith. The corporate leaders watched in horror as their perfect system of control began to fragment. Sarah witnessed the miracle unfold as more enhanced citizens joined the singing, each authentic expression of faith creating new cracks in the artificial consciousness. Children broke free first, their natural connection to wonder and belief proving stronger than programming. They ran to join Lily, forming an ever-growing circle of pure, unenhanced voices. The most powerful moment came when Tommy Anderson, his enhancement still active but failing, fought through the programming to reach Lily. "I hear him," he sobbed, grabbing her hand. "For the first time since they took me, I can hear God again." His declaration seemed to trigger a chain reaction as others began fighting through their programming, drawn to the growing circle of freedom. But the corporation hadn't lost yet. As their control wavered, they initiated emergency protocols. Enhanced individuals who couldn't break free began moving in aggressive formations, trying to contain the spread of awakening. The neural network pulsed with unprecedented power, attempting to reassert control over those who were breaking free. In this moment of crisis, Lily's prophecy fulfilled itself. The network's desperate grab for total control became its undoing. As it pushed harder against authentic human spirituality, it exposed its own artificial nature. Enhanced individuals could feel the difference between genuine divine connection and programmed responses, and more chose authenticity. "They can control our minds," Lily's voice rang out over the chaos, "but they can't control our souls. That belongs to God alone. Choose now." Her words, carried by something more than sound, reached into the deepest parts of enhanced consciousness, offering a choice that no amount of programming could override. The final confrontation took place at dawn, as the first rays of sunlight pierced through the city's artificial haze. The neural network, desperate to maintain control, had concentrated its power into a last-ditch effort to suppress the growing spiritual awakening. Enhanced individuals across the city lay unconscious as their minds became the battleground for a war between artificial and divine connection. Lily stood in the town square, a small figure somehow seeming to fill the space with presence. The remaining resistance members formed a circle around her, their voices raised in continuous prayer. Before them, ranks of enhanced security forces waited, their faces blank, weapons ready. But they couldn't advance. Something held them back, an invisible barrier created by faith and sustained by prayer. "It has to end where it began," Lily announced, her voice carrying the weight of divine authority. She turned to Sarah, her eyes filled with both love and resolution. "The same choice Daddy made. Someone has to break their power from inside." The meaning was clear. She would offer herself as a conduit, using her divine connection to overload the neural network. Sarah's heart shattered as she understood what this meant. There has to be another way, she pleaded, but even as she spoke, she recognized the same determination she'd seen in James's eyes the day before he died. Lily was her father's daughter, willing to sacrifice everything for truth. "Hold me, Mummy," Lily whispered, suddenly sounding like the child she truly was. "And don't stop praying. No matter what happens, don't stop praying." She clutched her father's cross as Sarah wrapped her arms around her, and together they began to pray. The air itself seemed to vibrate as Lily opened herself fully to divine power. Light emanated from her small body, growing in intensity until witnesses had to shield their eyes. The enhanced security forces fell to their knees, their programming overwhelmed by the pure spiritual energy flowing through her. Through their connected hands, Sarah felt her daughter's life force beginning to fade as the power flowing through her grew stronger. Lily's voice grew weaker, but her prayers never ceased. The light surrounding her intensified until it shot skyward like a beacon, a pillar of pure divine energy that connected heaven and earth. In that moment, every enhanced individual in the city and the world felt the touch of genuine divine presence. The artificial barriers in their minds shattered as authentic spiritual connection flooded through the neural network. The choice between artificial and divine became startlingly clear, and one by one they chose. The aftermath of Lily's sacrifice rippled through time like waves from a stone cast into still water. The shattered neural network lay dormant, its control centers dark and silent. Enhanced individuals around the world woke as if from a long dream, their minds their own again, though forever marked by the experience. The corporate headquarters stood empty, its leaders vanished in the chaos of awakening. Sarah knelt beside her daughter's small, still form in the town square, tears falling freely. The light had faded, but its effects remained. Those who witnessed it would never forget the moment when divine power flowed through a child's pure faith to break humanity's artificial chains. But Lily wasn't gone. As the morning sun reached its peak, her eyes fluttered open, though everyone present knew she wouldn't stay long. She had one final message to deliver. "Remember," she whispered, her voice carrying clearly across the silent square. "This wasn't just about technology, it was about choice. Every generation will face its own version of this test, the choice between genuine connection with God and artificial substitutes that promise easier answers." She turned to face the gathered crowd, enhanced and unenhanced alike, her eyes bright with otherworldly understanding. "The danger isn't in the tools we create," she continued, "but in letting them replace our divine spark, our free will, our capacity for true faith. Guard these gifts. They're what make us human." Using the last of her strength, Lily pressed her father's cross into Sarah's hands. "The battle isn't over," she said softly. "It just changes form. They'll try again with new technologies, new promises, new ways to control. But as long as people choose authentic faith over artificial comfort, humanity's soul will remain free." Her final words were both a blessing and a warning. "Don't let my father's sacrifice or mine be forgotten. Keep telling the story. Keep singing the hymns. Keep praying with real faith, not programmed responses. Because in the end, that's what saves us, not our inventions, but our connection to the divine." With these words, Lily Miller closed her eyes for the last time, a smile of perfect peace on her face. In that moment, witnesses would later swear they saw two figures of light, one tall and scholarly, one small and bright, embrace her spirit as it left her body, escorting her home. The town square became a memorial, not just to Lily and James Miller, but to the eternal truth they died protecting, that the human soul, with its capacity for genuine faith, love and free will, is a divine gift that no technology should ever replace. Share your thoughts in the comments below. How does this story resonate with your own beliefs about technology and faith? What moments touched you the most? Lily's unwavering faith, Sarah's struggle as a mother, or James's ultimate sacrifice? Have you ever felt the tension between technological progress and spiritual authenticity in your own life? Let's discuss how we can preserve genuine human connection and faith in an increasingly digital world. Your perspective matters in this crucial conversation about humanity's future.